There's a moment that catches almost every middle class investor off guard. You open your investment account on a random afternoon, look at the balance, and something feels off. Not wrong exactly, just smaller than it should be. You've been putting money in for years. You've owned the right funds. You've done the things you're supposed to do. So why does the number feel like it's moving slower than it should? Here's what I want to tell you. Somewhere in your investing life, you have almost certainly made at least 3 of the 5 mistakes I'm about to walk through. Not because you're reckless, not because you're careless, because every single one of them looks completely reasonable in the moment and nobody ever runs the actual math on what they cost. So today, that's what we're going to do, because when you add these 5 mistakes up over a normal investing career, the average middle class investor is leaving over $400,000 on the table, not from a crash, not from a scam, from 5 small decisions that each felt fine at the time. I'm going to walk through everyone, run the numbers on what each of them costs, and by the end, I need you to be honest with yourself about which ones are quietly costing you the most, because at least one of them is going to hit close to home. Mistake 1. There's waiting to start. This is the single most expensive mistake in personal finance, and almost nobody feels it happening because the cost is entirely invisible in the present. Let me show you what I mean with a clean example. 2 people, same career, same salary, same 7% real return. Person A starts investing $500 a month at age 25. Person B waits until 35, then invests the exact same $500 a month, and to make it a fair fight, Person B never stops until they've been investing for 40 years. Now, before I tell you the number, I want you to actually guess in your head. How much further ahead is Person A? Twice as much? 3 times? Here's what actually happens. Person A ends up with roughly $1.2 million. Person B ends up with about $570,000. The difference in what they put in is $60,000. The difference in what they end up with is over $600,000. That is what a decade of compounding actually looks like when you draw it out. It's not that the early money made a little more, it's that the early money made almost everything. And the wild part is, Person B usually didn't consciously decide to wait. They just told themselves they'd start when they had more money, or when things settled down, or after they paid off the car, and every year they waited, they paid an invisible tax that they will never fully see. Because you can't miss money, you never watched compound. Which brings us to a much sneakier version of the same problem. Mistake 2, the fee drag. This one is quiet, which is exactly why it works. Somewhere in your 401k or in an old rollover IRA or in a fund your advisor put you into years ago, there is almost certainly a product charging you something like 1% a year in expenses. A comparable index fund charges around 0.05%. That gap looks like nothing on paper, less than 1%. Who cares? Let's see what it actually does. Take $200,000 invested for 30 years at 7%. In the low-cost index fund, you end up with about 1.5 million. In the higher fee fund, you end up with about 1.15 million. A difference of roughly $350,000 that quietly evaporated into the operating budget of a company you've probably never spoken to. And here's the part that really stings. Study after study, decade after decade shows that the majority of actively managed funds underperform their benchmark over any meaningful time horizon. So you are paying premium prices for a product that, on average, delivers worse results than the cheap version sitting right next to it on the menu. That's not investing. That's a slow leak with a fancy prospectus attached. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable, because the next one hits the responsible investors hardest. Mistake 3, selling in the panic. Somewhere along the way, the market falls off a cliff. The news gets loud. Your account balance turns red. Every instinct in your body says, get out, protect what's left, wait for things to calm down. So you sell, just for a little while, just until things feel safer. Here's what happens next. There's a well-known piece of research from JP Morgan that shows what happens if you miss just the best days in the market over a 20-year window. If you stayed fully invested, you roughly doubled the return of someone who missed just the 10 best trading days. 10 days. out of 5,000. And those best days almost always sit right on top of the worst days because that's when the market rips back. So the people who bail out in the panic are structurally the exact people who miss the recovery every single time. On a $250,000 portfolio held for 20 years, missing the 10 best days is worth somewhere around $200,000 in lost wealth. That's not a strategy. That's expensive intuition dressed up as caution, and it usually happens in about 3 clicks on a phone at 11 at night. Okay, hang with me. The next one is going to sound too basic to matter. It isn't. Mistake 4. Leaving the match on the table. Between 1 in 5 and 1 in 4 American workers with access to an employer 401k match don't contribute enough to actually get the full match. Let that sit for a second. That is free money sitting on a table that people are actively walking past on their way to work. Let me put a number on it. Say you earn $70,000 a year and your employer offers a 4% match. That is $2,800 a year of pure unearned money, contingent only on you putting in your share. Skip it for 30 years and you have walked away from $84,000 in raw contributions. Invested at 7% over the same window, that's roughly $265,000 gone, not lost, refused. And here's the thing. The reason people skip it isn't laziness. It's usually one of two things. Either they didn't understand how the match worked when they signed up, or their lifestyle was calibrated to their full paycheck and they couldn't stomach giving up the take home. Both of those are fixable, but only if somebody actually shows you the number. And now the last one, which is honestly the most heartbreaking one because it doesn't feel like a mistake at all. Mistake 5, the cash drag. It feels like being disciplined. You keep a healthy cushion in savings, 6 months of expenses, then a year. Then you build up an extra chunk because a home renovation is coming, or the kids are getting close to college, or you just sleep better knowing it's there. Meanwhile, that cash sits in a savings account earning almost nothing in real terms because whatever the account pays, inflation eats. Let's run it. Say you keep an extra $60,000 in cash beyond what you actually need for emergencies. Over 20 years at roughly 1% real, that becomes about $73,000. Invested in a broad market index at a 7% real return over the same window, it becomes about $232,000. The difference, $159,000, is the price you paid for the feeling of being safe. Now, some cash cushion is genuinely necessary. Nobody should invest their emergency fund, but the extra $40,000 or $60,000 that so many careful savers keep parked as a comfort blanket is quietly one of the most expensive comfort blankets in the entire financial system. So let's actually add this up because this is the part that should make you flinch. Waiting 10 years to start, roughly $600,000 in lost lifetime wealth. Paying an extra 1% in fees, another $350,000. Missing the 10 best days by panic selling once or twice, another $200,000. Skipping the employer match, another $265,000. Cash drag on an oversized cushion, another $160,000. You do not need to make all 5 of these to end up in the hole. You only need to make 2 or 3, which is roughly what the average middle-class investor actually does over the course of a career. That is where the $400,000 gap comes from. It didn't come from a crash. It didn't come from a scam. It came from a series of small, reasonable-looking decisions that each felt fine in the moment and added up to something that isn't fine at all. And the reason nobody warns you about any of this is that every single one of these mistakes has an industry attached to it that benefits from you making it. The fund companies benefit from the fees. The financial media benefits from the panic. The banks benefit from the cash drag. Your employer is not going to chase you down about the match. The machine is calibrated to convert your working years into someone else's revenue. But here's the good news. The math is symmetrical. The same compounding that quietly destroys you when you are making these mistakes works just as quietly in your favor the moment you stop. You don't need to time the market. You don't need a hot pick. You don't need a guy in a vest with a spreadsheet. You just need to start early, keep your fees low, stay in your seat through the downturns, take every dollar of match that's offered, and stop hoarding cash you don't actually need. That's it. 5 moves. That's the entire game. If this made you flinch even once, hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.